We are now recording.
Okay, good evening, everybody. The time is 6 p.m. on November 19, 2020, and I would like to call this meeting of the Growth Management Oversight Commission to order. In the interest of public safety, or public health and safety, and pursuant to the Governor Executive Order N-2920, members of the Growth Management Oversight Commission and staff are participating in this meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the executive order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in council chambers. The city launched a virtual commenting period, e-comment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their homes. You may find the link to e-comment at www.chulavistaca.gov/virtual meetings. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period in order to be considered. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow the Growth Management Oversight Commission time to read any comments that have been received. If you have difficulties or need assistance with e-comment during the meeting, please email Secretary Claudia Ramos at cramos@chulavistaca.gov, and Developmental Services staff will assist you. Would the Secretary please conduct a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Alatorre?
Present.
Commissioner Caudillo? Okay. Commissioner Juarez? Commissioner Lenguiel?
Here.
Commissioner Strong?
Here.
Commissioner Torres?
Present.
And Chair Hooker?
Here. Okay, the first order of business is approval of the minutes. I will now call on a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments. As a reminder, please refresh your screen to ensure new comments are received. Okay, the comment period for this item is closed. Claudia, I didn't see any comments. Can you verify?
Yes, I didn't see any either, and I didn't get any via email.
Okay. Next item is there a motion to approve the minutes on the consent calendar?
Well, if nobody's making the motion, I will.
Okay. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Lengyel, I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Torres and a second by Commissioner Langell to approve the minutes. Secretary, can you cast or do a vote?
Yes. Commissioner Alatorre, how do you vote?
Sorry, I missed the question. I was just walking the door.
Okay, so we're looking at the minutes.
Yes, I approve.
Okay. And then Commissioner Caudillo and Commissioner Juarez have not come on. So Commissioner Langell made a motion. Commissioner Strong,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres made the motion, and Chair Hooker.
Yes. Anybody else? Nobody else? Okay. Okay, consent calendar is approved. Okay, now we will public comments on the section on the agenda to address board item or to address items that are not on the agenda. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on the screen to ensure there are any comments. Okay, the comment period for the public comments is now closed. I did not see any comments. Can you verify that, Claudia?
I did not receive any comments.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 2, Police Department presentation. Welcome, Chief Kennedy and Mr. Walker. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity to be here tonight. Joseph Walker is going to be sharing the screen, and we'll put up a PowerPoint. So we were asked, and I just want to give you the precursor that I do have some good news to share with you tonight, which is always nice. But we were asked to explore different metrics that capture the community sentiment associated with the interactions they may have with my organization with my team members. So we prepared for you a brief presentation to go over some of the ideas that we have as we try to meet the needs of our community. So it's important for you to know, when we look historically, the Chula Vista Police Department has reported out response times for priority 1s and priority 2 calls for service as a way to measure the department's ability to address community concerns as our city grows and expands. And as you all know, when you look at the screen, you can see from 2011 to 2019 that we were not meeting our goals. And when you look at that, priority 1, which is life and safety calls for service, the goal is for officers to respond within 6 minutes. And then when you look at priority 2 calls for service, our goal was to respond to imminent danger calls. And the goal is currently to respond within 12 minutes. And as I said, we have routinely not been able to meet those thresholds. And priority 1 calls for service, we have not met in 10 years. Priority 2 calls for service, I believe we're at 20 years that we have not been able to meet the thresholds. And if you recall, since becoming the police chief, which I've made it to 4 years now on December 30th, my focus was always to be extremely transparent. And the work that we did was to include as many calls for service as possible into the metrics. And so if you recall, we went back when I became a chief and we looked at taking the calls for service and we changed how we responded because we would factor out a lot of different things. So what we were doing is just straight data from when we received the call for service and when the officers actually responded. And so when we looked at the study in 2018, our calls for service for priority 2 response times were negative because of the additional calls took our response times way above our trending average, which was 13 minutes and 51 seconds. So we really took a big hit when we changed to straight data in 2018, which I think is okay because we really want to know how long it actually takes to get to the calls and to get there to help our community. And so although this was a huge spike in our response times, I felt it was necessary to be transparent and how could we fix things if we didn't know exactly what we were dealing with. So in the next slide, if you can move to that, Joseph, it's kind of hard to do everything virtually when you're not in the same room. I want you to know that I'm extremely happy to report to you that for fiscal year 2021, that our department right now has been meeting our priority 1 response times with units arriving on an average of 5 minutes and 50 seconds. And that is after the call is dispatched. And this is a historic achievement for us. And it reflects our commitment that we want to get there to respond to emergencies in a timely way. And I do believe Chair Hooker had asked me at one point if he thought that I would ever be able to make that goal, that response time. And I said I did not think so. And I'm here to tell you that we did. We've been doing that for the last 5 months. And I hope that that trend continues. And I'll explain a little bit more about that shortly. When you look at the bottom at the priority 2 goal, the response times are currently trending at 13 minutes and 39 seconds. And this trend is in line with fiscal year 2014 response times that were trending at 13 minutes and 36 seconds. Remember, I told you we changed things in 2018. I want to point out that back in 2014, Chula Vista Police Department had, the city of Chula Vista had approximately 25,000 less residents. And the Millennia Project and other developments on the east of Chula Vista were just starting. So really, when you look at this, how did we do this? How did we start making these positive changes in response time? And as I mentioned to you in past presentations, hiring more officers, which has been achievable thanks to Measure A and to City Council approval, and using technology like our Live 911 and our drones as first responder has noticeably helped close that gap. We are also using dashboards to analyze staffing levels in our patrol teams and realigning personnel based on response times. This means we shift officers from teams that are meeting the response times and have enough officers into teams where the data shows response times aren't being met. And this is why I would like to continue using the existing P1 and P2 response times metrics so we can continue to monitor the success of these strategies and give officers goals. So, and you'll see the last slide that we had up there was actually the dashboard that you can actually go on. At the bottom of this link, it shows you that there's a link you can click on to actually see this. This is a growth management oversight dashboard that we provided to our community to be very transparent. So when we look at the existing metrics, I want you to keep this in mind. We want to help us stay consistent with metrics other agencies use. So we look at what we're doing as compared to other agencies. It will allow us, by continuing to keep priority 1 and priority 2 response times, it'll allow us to monitor how our staffing and automation changes affect our response times. The data will be available to the public and allow the public to continue to see that our department is transparent. And it's also important for us to give our officers goals and our supervisors so they see that we want to meet these thresholds. And the goal is to get there to our community as quickly as possible to help them when they're in need. So we'll go to the next slide, Joseph. And when we look at these proposed metrics, we're really working with the GMOC staff and discussing potential new measures that might best represent the community sentiment. And after exploring some options, we believe that a survey can best represent the sentiment of our community towards our Chula Vista Police Department. Really, in reality, if we don't have the support of our community and we don't know if there are issues and we're not able to monitor that, then we might not be meeting the needs of our community as well. And that's very important to us. So we recently deployed a customer satisfaction survey tool in our department that is helping us stay engaged with people requesting assistance. And so I'm going to have Joseph explain to you what this third-party vendor group is doing for us, show you some of the results and the latest surveys that we have received. And these surveys are beyond what we did with Sandag. So we also did a survey with Sandag the last year and a half, and that showed that we had a 91% citizen satisfaction rating in our community. And so you want to make sure, you know, the times are changing and we have challenges in law enforcement without a doubt, but I'm really proud of what we've been doing within our community. And when you see some of these, the feedback from our community, it shows us that yes, there are areas of improvement, but also that we're really connecting with our community, which I think is really important. So Joseph, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Commissioners. Basically, as the Chief mentioned, we do have an ongoing survey. The program started not too long ago, and we've had some very positive success in different aspects. The first one, like the Chief mentioned, it continues to enforce and emphasize the Chief's continued dedication to stay engaged with the community. So by doing the survey, which I'll show you a few screen prints of what people get, it is definitely interactive, and it continuously reminds people of how we are interested in making sure that their concerns are addressed. Additionally, the survey is done by a third-party vendor, which allows for complete disclosure of all the entries that are being populated, so there is no interference by the police department regarding that. The results are available to the public and can be made available to anyone through dashboards that we're going to showcase today. Obviously, this would be a dashboard also that would be reflected in the GMOC website. So it would be definitely the GMOC's dashboard. And the latest survey results are available within 24 hours. So really, it's almost instantaneous results. The ranking has a 1 through 7 Likert scale. So you'll be able to see whether or not the person was completely satisfied or agreed to dissatisfied or not agreed with the performance. If there are any other questions, if there are no other questions, I can move on to the next slide. Okay, so this slide just highlights how the process works. The process is basically focused on community and the engaging with the public, and it follows the precedents done by other private companies. This vendor does not work directly for them or with them, but I believe it follows the same principles of the acknowledgement phase, which highlights whether or not there's been an incident and the police department addresses the receipt of that incident, provides updates systematically as the evolution of the facts come to light. And then the feedback phase, which is basically the survey itself that is filled out by the recipient and submitted if they're interested in submitting their feedback. So,
Joseph, can I add one thing?
Yes, sure.
Because I think it's really important. The best way for me to explain it, and I don't know if you were going to go there, Joseph, so I apologize if I interrupted you, but it's like when you order something through Amazon, you immediately get an acknowledgement that they received your order. And then you get updates when your order is being shipped and so on and so forth. And then you get feedback after the fact. This is the same method that's being utilized. And to me, to many of our community members, just to have acknowledgement alone that we received the call, that it might take time for us to respond, is a huge asset to our community, that they feel like they're being heard and they're not being ignored, and that sometimes we have to respond to higher priority calls, but it gives them a sense of knowing that we do hear what's happening and they're going to be addressed. So anyways, I just wanted to add that part, Joseph, if you don't mind.
No problem, Chief. So as the Chief mentioned, these are some examples of the interactions that happen between the recipient or us receiving the call for assistance and the response we provide to them. What you're looking in the gray boxes are basically text messages that the recipient receives. And they also have, if they provided an email address, emails that get issued to them. So that way they know the status of what's going on with their incident. So it could be acknowledging that that we received the call and we're in the process of responding to it. It could be another response saying we're on our way, or there's been a delay, or just keeping them aware that we are aware of the situation and we're trying to handle it, to even providing them a resolution, which may say we've identified the individual and the suspect is now in custody, or we were still following up on the investigations. So here's other examples of it. We do have a variety types of crimes addressed. As you can tell, this one is related to domestic violence. We try to cover as many possible types of calls for service. Not all of them, given the sensitivity of some of the calls. We want to make sure that we protect the interest of the person who is submitting the request for assistance. But for the most part, we do try to reach out to as many calls for service calls that we get. And as you can tell in the bottom one here, this is where the final phase of the interaction with the recipient of the calls of the survey. This is the actual survey link that takes them to an area where they actually populate their opinion of each and every one of the different questions they get. What we are planning on doing, or we're proposing to the GMOC, is to capture content associated with the department's overall performance. So there are two metrics that are available currently in that survey. The first one is a survey question that basically asks, I am satisfied with the service provided by the Chula Vista Police Department. At this point, the person can say they strongly agree, strongly disagree, somewhat agree, they're not sure, or disagree, or somewhat disagree. So these values are quantified, and then we represent them through this bar chart and a pie chart, so that way people can see the percentages of the total. And we do highlight the totals down here, so that way they can see the total accumulated responses provided. So this is one of the responses from the survey. The next one is also dealing with the department overall. And it says, and it states, overall, your experience interacting with members of the Chula Vista Police Department was positive. And again, the individual has an ability to rate us from 1 to 7 options. And again, the data gets captured overnight and can be available to the public, again, through the GMOC dashboards. Let me see. Are there any particular questions regarding the survey, the proposed survey that we have?
Yeah, I got one question. So would these be tied to the priority 1 and priority 2 calls, or would these be separate?
They are not tied to priority 1 or 2. They're actually tied to all types of priorities. So it's not directly linked to the actual response for priority 1 and 2 arrival times. This is just interactions, whether it be a response that leads to an investigation to just general interactions with the public.
Okay,
If anything, it's more broader than priority 1 and 2s.
right, okay, all right, that's what I want to confirm.
This is Commissioner Torres, so I just want to make sure that I understood what you just said. So anybody who has had any interaction with the police department in any manner whatsoever, say over the last 12-month period, they automatically will get some kind of communication via email, text message, postcard, letter, whatever, referring them to this survey. Am I correct?
Most calls for service, Commissioner Torres. So not all of them, but for the most part, most of them.
So
And,
Joseph, I can add on that if you'd like for clarity. So for instance, right now, this metrics is used on particular calls. So it's not on every single call, and it's only utilized for people that give us either their email address or they give us their cell phone number. So we don't have the financial capability to necessarily send out letters or to send out postcards or anything like that. This is all done interactive through our CAD system. And we have a company that we contract with that has built it into our computer-aided dispatch system, and it sends out messages. So if somebody was anonymous, say for instance, we might not be able to capture that if they didn't want to give their cell phone number, or they gave out an incorrect number, which sometimes does happen. There's no way to do it completely, but it does give us a gauge on what areas we need to improve upon. And these are just two captions of the aspect of the program that we use. There are more than just these, but we were trying to look at a way for you as a GMOC board to see if we were meeting the needs of our community as well.
No, I think it's commendable, but just one other quick clarifying question. What's the response rate of those solicitations? Say you get 1,000 individuals who have interacted with the police department, either priority 1, priority 2 call for service, and you sent out the link to the survey. What is the response rate to those who actually respond to the survey?
Commissioner, I can give you that information. I don't have it with me right now, but I can try and get that information for you. What you're looking at right now is a snapshot of the last 3 months of interactions with the public. And like the chief mentioned, some calls are weird. We don't issue it. Again, for different reasons. And another example I can tell you is if there's been a death due to homicide or what have you, we don't actually send out a survey to the residents, given the sensitivity and nature of the call. But we try as much as possible to share our interest to get the feedback. Are there any other questions?
So are these handed out at officer's discretion, or is it just random?
They're issued automatically, and they're pre-selected based on the type of call.
Okay.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'm going to go to the next metric. Here. So the next metric it proposed is to use the FBI Crime Index to compare the city's performance related to crime and against the region. In the region, we're talking about the jurisdictions that are within the county, and the party involved in generating that information is currently SANDAC. What they do is they compile the data associated with crime rates, and then they do the region's average and then compare us, each and every city. But in our case, I'm showing you our performance against the average performance of the rest of the agencies. We believe this is another one of those metrics that, again, it's an independent evaluator doing this, and it definitely compares us against the performance of other regions. So that way the community can get a better perspective of how safe Chula Vista is. And I believe that's basically it. So those two are the metrics that we are proposing for you to consider as part of the GMOC report card that we would have to be reporting out systematically. Are there any additional questions? Or Chief, do you want to say anything else?
No, I'm actually really excited that we have an opportunity to bring some new ideas to the GMOC, and we're looking for your thoughts and your ideas. And really, it's all about our partnership with the community and making sure that our community feels connected to our police department and that we're doing the right thing to keep them safe.
This is Commissioner Torres. Can I ask a question?
Go
Certainly.
ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, first I want to commend the chief and her staff actually thinking outside the box as to how to address the quality of life ethos, if you will, with regard to the whole GMOC ordinance as it applies to the police department. So I want to say that off the top. But I want to direct the chief's attention to a publication that it issued out, and this was kind of during the summer in response to the George Floyd protest, and it was a publication called Who We Are. You remember that?
Yes.
Okay. What I was hoping is that, again, kind of thinking outside the box, because I read that publication, it was very insightful and very informative. And I thought that another way to look at the police department within the matrix of quality of life is the department's ability to adhere to Senate Bill 230 and Senate Bill 392. And I know the chief knows what those refer to. I don't know if the other commissioners do, but it all talks about, training, de-escalation, implicit bias, use of force, paradigm use of force, and de-escalation and whatnot. And I wanted to know the chief's thought about including those metrics moving forward, about the department's ability to abide by the dictates of SB 230 and SB 392. Could you opine on that, Chief?
Well, I'm certainly not opposed to that. We put everything on our website already. In fact, Joseph is our expert when it comes to dashboards, and we just did a whole dashboard on use of force. Our de-escalation is a huge priority to us, and one of the best tools that we utilize at our department right now is our Drone as First Responder program, which I think gives officers real-time information to make better informed decisions, and so that hopefully force does not need to be used, but also so that we have the real picture of exactly what's taking place. So I'm open to ideas. I don't know how exactly we would do that because it's so complex, but I would certainly be open. I see Joseph. See, he's so good. He's already putting up the use of force annual figures. And so in reality, in terms of use of force, we receive about 77,000. It's taking time to load, but I know it's over 77,000 calls for service. And in those instances, I believe the figures were like 0.057% or something to that number. So we use force less than 1% of the times that we ever encounter anyone. So, we're certainly open to ideas, but I really don't know beyond what we already do, how you would want to include that. But it really, truly, it's a passion of mine and my leadership here at the department. We have met with I think we're at about 22 different community organizations, activist groups, and, we respond to every single letter that we receive. We provide them with who we are and what we stand for. There's a lot of misinformation out there in terms of force and how it's perceived in terms of what we use and how we use it. I know I've read articles where they had incorrect information. And so we chose the way of being extremely transparent and providing this on our webpage so that we hope that people will go to our webpage to see actually what the actual information is that uploads. Joseph, if I'm not mistaken, is it uploading every day, or how are we doing that?
Yes, Chief, the information is refreshed every day. And what you're looking at right now is 2020 use of force incidences where it was actually deployed. And You can see as the trend of the types of use of force. If you're interested in looking at prior years, you can actually go up here and select the year that you're interested in, and it'll refresh. It's a little bit slow, unusual for today, but I don't want to click it, but you can actually click there and you'll see 2019, 2018, like the chief highlighted. This is the calls for service volume as of last night, and this is the use of force counts as of last night. And like the chief mentioned, hopefully I won't have to refresh this again. It does show you in perspective the number of instances we've had to use of force and the number of interactions, possible interactions that we have with the public. And this is again available to you in the open data portal that's available to the public on our website. I'm going to try and see if I can get there. But this is our web page for it.
And I'd also like to add for the commission to please take a look at our webpage and all the open data initiatives. We were one of the first departments to sign on with the open data initiative years ago, and we provide all types of information. So if there's something you think is missing or something that you need clarity on, or if the commission decides that they think there's other options for this, we're more than happy to. But what I find often is that even when I meet with activists, they've never even gone onto our webpage and looked at who we are and all the information that we provide. Like every single department policy is on our webpage right now. And right now I have my community advisory committee that is taking some of the controversial policies, and we have reworked them, looked at them, with everything that happens, you look at the best practice with everything, and they're now evaluating our policies for us. So the community input is extremely important to us.
Yeah, and I want to commend you, Chief, because I thought when I read that publication, Who We Are, I was really taken by it. And it has a story to tell. And that's the reason why I'm suggesting that the department work with Kimberly, Elliot, and Kim, and put your heads together to come up with new metrics aside from response times, addressing quality of life. And that's the reason why I bring these up, because I think you have a story to tell, and I think we need to get it out using the GMOC as the vehicle by which to do it. Okay?
Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Okay, Chief Kennedy, I remember when you told me that, and I'm glad you were proven wrong. This is great news, and I'm very happy that you guys have achieved that milestone. I kind of thought you would more than you did, but that's really great to see.
Well, you know what, everyone, we really focus on the customer service and the response to our community. And we've really focused on the culture within our organization of talking to people about putting yourself in other people's shoes, and that if that was your family member, would you have handled that scenario or expected an officer to handle that differently? And if the answer is yes, and I expect you to get your rear back over there and do the right thing, because our job is to help our community. The challenge that we have in our job is that it's an inherently dangerous job, and we deal with volatile situations. We're even at a point right now where there's discussion with us in Health and Human Services of being a test bed for the possibility of having counselors work in our community to respond to lower level mental health issues. We already have a psychiatric emergency response team, officers and clinicians that work directly with us, but we are certainly not opposed to new ideas. We feel like law enforcement is put in a situation where we have to respond to a little bit of everything all the time. And there are sometimes things that maybe shouldn't be a law enforcement response. So we're in the process of coming up with ideas, and there's so much work going on in San Diego County. For those of you who don't know, I am the president of the San Diego County Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, and we're all working on reform. And we don't think of reform as bad. Okay, what we think of reform is change, and we need to do change for the good, not change just to change. And sometimes people are making and throwing out all these ideas about change with not enough knowledge and information. That's the challenge that we have. We need to find ways to do the right thing for the right reason. And so we're committed to that at Chula Vista PD. We're not afraid to listen to the suggestions and recommendations from others, but also we want people to listen to also, there's sometimes reasons why we do things that people don't understand. So I think it's a good discussion. We're certainly open to it. I know that Joseph has a great working relationship with Kim and with Kimberly, and we're talking about ideas, but I think tonight is important to hear kind of what your thoughts are. And it's, we don't want to, it's sometimes when you look at use of force also, you need to understand that sometimes use of force is displaying a weapon, or, it's not necessarily that we actually used it, but sometimes we have to pull our guns on scenarios until we know that there's not a threat. So it can seem like even when it says less than 1%, it might not even be that much. Joseph, does that make sense?
Yeah, Chief. In fact, I think the percentage is 0.3% of the 1%. So it's 0.3 of 1%.
Okay. So see, I over-exaggerated.
I do have one question. So I saw today that the governor issued a curfew or stay-at-home order between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. and saw that the sheriff, San Diego sheriff, was going to be helping. I only caught a tidbit of it, of whether he's going to help enforce the curfew or help enforce the health, the lockdown from a restaurant perspective.
I don't believe it has anything to do with curfew. They're working on strategies to deal with problem locations, and when it gets to like the cease and desist type orders, then he has asked for other agencies to help within their own jurisdiction. Just so that you know, I said that we would be more than happy to help protect our own community. I'm really hesitant about having other agencies do any level of enforcement in our community. I hope that makes sense. I want to just make sure we know what's happening, and our goal is voluntary compliance without a doubt, and not to create any hardships for our community. But there are some challenges right now with certain locations that have created some challenges, and so that's all that they're saying right now. I don't anticipate that anything's going to be much different than it is. It's just going to be focused on problematic locations. And in the city of Chula Vista, it goes to code enforcement and to economic development, because we didn't want that to be a police-related issue. We have enough challenges right now in terms of public perception. Thank goodness we're in Chula Vista. That's all I have to say, because our community is extremely supportive. But we work with them and we try to help, and our officers hand out masks. They are there to help our community through the most challenging time that I've ever personally experienced. So the goal is not to make it more difficult. It's about the quality of life in Chula Vista.
Okay, great. That's what I was wondering, and just wanted to make sure that's what you were thinking.
Yeah.
Do any other commissioners have questions?
Chairman Hooker, if I could just add something.
Go ahead.
Okay. First of all, well, I don't know what's going on with my video, but thank you so much, Chief Kennedy and Joseph. When we went to them, Kim and I said, the response times just don't seem to tell the picture of what a great job that our police department does. So how can we demonstrate to the community or measure how safe the community is? So that's what we talked about. I really like the metric where we're compared to other cities in the region, because I think that's a good thing to track, how we're doing compared to other cities. And certainly to measure how safe people feel, these surveys are just an excellent tool. So we'll continue to work with them, and just thank you so much, Chief Kennedy. And I'm just so proud to work in a city where we have such a great police chief.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. I have great people. That's what makes it easier for me.
And Kim and Chief Kennedy, one metric that I think would be interested in looking at is we always hear that we have low crime, but what is the crime? I mean, is there a spike in robberies, break-ins? I mean, what is the problem crimes that we have? And, is that a way to track any of those metrics?
So we can, I mean, Joseph could probably throw up a dashboard for you on that right now. But so in our city, residential crime has gone down right now, and that's because everybody's home. Commercial crime has increased. Violent crime in terms of homicide has increased, just like what you hear on the national narrative. We've had, well, I don't want to frighten everyone, but we've had significant crime in terms of aggravated assault and in homicide in our community. So, but it has not risen higher than other areas. It's trending. Joseph, is that the best way for me to say it?
I was actually going to interject, Chief, that when the Chief mentioned that homicide is high compared to prior trends, which we have trended about 3 for the last 3 years, I believe, we are trending right now at 8 a year. So again, it is higher than what we are used to, but compared to other jurisdictions, we continue to be a safe city. The same thing with aggravated assaults. Like you saw, I don't have an ability to share the screen anymore, but like you saw before in the crime index by Sandag, compared to other to other jurisdictions, we continue to be one of the safest cities in the county and obviously in the nation. So here's the, again, this includes crime, violent crime includes murder, rape, property crime, obviously it's burglary, larceny. So definitely we are higher than what we used to trend, but we're still continue to be below what other cities right next to us are going through.
And a lot of the violent, the homicides had to do with domestic violence and different things. And you'll hear that commonly mentioned in the news that domestic violence is increasing. So there are challenges that we're facing right now dealing with the pandemic alone. And then on top of that, we had a lot of demonstrations and issues. Nothing problematic in our community, though. I'm very thankful. We've had a lot of support. And I want you to know we had a protest at our police department. And we all talked to our officers about allowing people to have an opportunity to share their concerns and voice their frustration and just listen to what they have to say and be respectful. We got a thank you letter from a lady that was with the BLM that talked about our department and the way our officers handled themselves and the diversity that she saw within our organization. And I want you to know I saved that and it's framed. But it's when we talk about taking the higher road, and I tell the officers, taking the higher road is not always the easy way to go, but it's the right thing to do. And right now I'm not saying we have a perfect department, and I'm not saying we don't have issues to deal with. I mean, I deal with human beings, but I have to tell you, I'm awfully proud of my organization, and I'm awfully proud of the people who've shown up every day through the most challenging times I've ever seen in my 28 years of law enforcement. This has been, it's been very rewarding to see people who truly do care about their community. I wish more people had an opportunity to know the inside of this organization and what the people are like here.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Kennedy.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner have any comments or questions? Okay, if not, I will now call on a 2-minute pause to allow for public to submit any final comments on this item. As a reminder, refresh your screen to view any questions that may appear. Okay, the comment period for this item is now closed. I did not see any comments. Can you verify that?
There was one comment received from Hale Richardson. She says, "Thank you to the chief and her team. So wonderful to see the clear and demonstrable progress. Grateful for the transparency and the obvious effort to connect with public and ensure resident sentiment is considered."
That's great. Again, thank you very much, Chief Kennedy and Mr. Walker.
And I believe Joseph wanted to share one more screen. Is that still correct?
If you allow me, Commissioner Judy had mentioned about can we tell when crime is going up or down. I just want to show you something that's been available on the website, just so that way the community is aware. Again, going back to the chief's concern about transparency, there is this crime and community safety dashboard. This dashboard has 3 tabs, and within the tabs, you'll be able to navigate. Let me see if I can open it up. You can see the crime trends for the different types of crimes that we have in the community by year. So you can actually toggle between them so you can better understand what's going on in our community.
Joseph, it's not showing.
Oh, I apologize. I thought it was. Let me see. Let's try it again. Can you see it now?
No, it sounded fantastic though.
Yeah, it sounds great. We believe you.
Yeah, so I guess I can't share it right now for whatever reason, but
I think it's coming now. There it is.
There it is.
okay. So the long story short is we are developing a lot of the dashboards. This one has been in place for a while now, but this one does address directly your concern about what types of crimes are happening and whether or not they're going down or up compared to prior years. And then we definitely are looking at ways to innovate. And for the commissioners, this is a brand new dashboard that actually highlights by neighborhood the type of crime that's going on in your neighborhood. So you can actually select your neighborhood, and what it does, you can select the date range, and it'll show you what crime has taken place. And if you think you have a particular type of crime, you can look at the information down here, and it actually tells you the specific crime that's happening in your community and how much of it. So again, going back to full disclosure and the ability for you to control some of the access to the information, the chief is very eager in sharing technology like this. This one is a very brand new dashboard that we've developed. And again, it's available to you through the One Open Data Initiative page. If you just look at crime and disorder, you'll find it down here.
Okay,
And
great.
if I can add one thing in regards to this, so you can't solely use crime as the only metrics. And the reason is because the data is only as good as the information that we receive. And there are a segment of society out there that does not call the police. And so we have to look at a lot of different ways of trying to receive information to know when there are issues in our community. And that's why community partnership and connection and outreach and reaching out to all the groups within our community is important, because sometimes we find out about crime through them without having any of that data. So I just hope that as you look at everything, you consider there's a lot of different ways to measure if we're actually succeeding as a police organization.
Right. No, I agree with you there. I think, Kim and Kimberly, this is something that you should look at to be able to show that. I've been saying this for years. I think the police have done a great job, and they were getting a disservice with just doing response times. With the ride-alongs I've done with them, they're always respectful. They're always doing what's right, and we need to show a better, showcase more our police officers and the chief, and show that they're doing a good impact to the city. And maybe with some of these metrics, we can do that.
That's definitely our goal, Chairman.
Okay, well, thank you all. I'm gonna go home to see my husband.
All right, take care. Thank you.
All right,
Kennedy.
thank you. Thank you, Joseph.
No, my pleasure. Good night.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a presentation of threshold compliance questionnaires. Kim and Kimberly, all yours.
Okay, I think we might have missed an agenda item, which was the comprehensive review update. We can do it after Kim's, but I just want to make sure we get to that. Claudia, is that on the agenda?
Is this, so next on the agenda was a threshold compliance by him.
There should be, before the fire chief, there was an agenda item about the comprehensive review update.
No, I don't see
Okay.
that here.
Shoot, okay.
Hey, give me 1 second.
No, it's there. It's on the agenda. It's item number 2, comprehensive review update.
Yeah,
Okay,
Okay,
I
in-
have it now.
In
okay.
my script, I see police as item number 2.
Sorry, we must have not updated the script.
Okay, let me look at.
Is this, Kim,
Yeah.
is this what you needed?
That's it, yeah. Apology,
Yeah, that-
Chairman, yeah, we didn't update the script.
Yeah, that wasn't on the script, so that's probably why I didn't even look at it.
No problem. It's okay if I proceed then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I just thought at this point, it would be good to kind of pause and look at everything we've learned and where we're going with this comprehensive review process, which we started in August. And then we talked about the goal of shifting from a growth management focus. I loved the word ethos that Commissioner Torres used, to more of a quality of life perspective. And the reasons for that are that the city's just in a different place in its growth. The growth management oversight was very important 30 years ago, and then the subsequent years as the Eastern Territories were developing so rapidly, and for this organization to keep tabs on were the facilities being provided concurrently with need, and are we keeping up with parks and streets and all that. So we now have good systems in place to ensure that those things happen. So we think it's a really good time to now shift to quality of life, as we've discussed. So I thought I'd just run through quickly kind of each topic and what we've learned about each one, and look at the schedule at the end. So if you could go down 2 slides, Claudia. There we go. So the first one's public safety. And as I said, we went to the chief and said, how do we know how safe is our city? So they did an excellent job presenting that. And Kim and I will continue to work with them. Fire department, Kim and I have met with the fire chief and their analyst, and we have presented to them the same goal. How do we measure better, in a better way than just using the response times? How good a job the fire department's doing. So we're going to continue those meetings. And one thing particularly to look at is emergency medical services, since they're bringing that in-house now. Next slide. We talked about housing being a new metric, and that we had the housing manager, Leilani, come and give us a great presentation on all the new state housing regulations, which are really focused on encouraging new housing, especially affordable housing. When you look at all the new legislation, there's some come under an umbrella of the Housing Accountability Act, which is focused on really strong planning for housing, and then enforcement for cities that don't meet their goals. Another concept is no net loss. So they don't want cities to continue to downzone or downsize, therefore losing housing opportunities. Is that really annoying that I'm shaking like that? I'll stop my video. And she mentioned, as we've discussed, that there's no moratorium or allowed any longer. She's updating the general plan housing element. And so Kim and I will work with Leilani's team to define metrics and work with her. It sounds like there'll be a lot in the housing element, new housing element, that we can look at to measure on an annual basis. Next slide. Transportation and land use. Early on, we had a presentation by Scott Barker, our senior transportation engineer, on the new idea of vehicle miles traveled being the metric for CEQA. So as a requirement of SB 743, the city adopted new transportation study guidelines, which tells the developers and the traffic engineers that they hire how to do traffic studies based on this new metric of vehicle miles traveled. I'm working with that team on creating a mitigation program. So you're going to see next year, as we work through this, really a change in our fee programs that will either have a VMT fee included or shift some of the facilities under a VMT kind of umbrella. For example, building pedestrian bridges is VMT reducing, because it's, if you can walk across a bridge and connect to different communities, you're not in your car. So the consultant's going to help us with some metrics that we'll bring back to you. And then Kim and I also met with the city traffic engineer and about the work they do with the safety commission. So we're going to continue those conversations as well. Next slide. Connected communities. We had a presentation by Tracy Lamb, the Director of Development Services, and then the Library Director and Parks and Rec Administrator. And our big question to them and to ourselves has been, is square feet of libraries or acres of parks really a good measure of the quality of services that are being provided through the rec department at our parks? Are they designed well? Are they being used? They did a great job demonstrating how they're operating during COVID without any facilities available. So I think that's a really good indicator that the square feet just isn't a good measure. And one theme that we heard loud and clear from them is that their goals and their focus is on wellness and improving quality of life in everything they do. So more to come on that for metrics that we'll develop with them. Next slide. Economic development, Eric Crockett, Economic Development Director, and he's now the Deputy City Manager, and Miranda, oops, she's not the Deputy City Manager, that's a typo. She's the Economic Specialist. So they gave a great presentation about their goals of growing a healthy, strong, and diverse economic base with metrics that they look at every year. Eric talked about the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and prosperity. And one of their focuses is an inclusive economic development that raises all economic levels. And then Eric also shared about the COVID-19 economic recovery plan, which is really focused on small businesses that were struggling, the grants that were given through the CARES Act funds, and just the technical support and other support we're trying to give businesses to have them stay open. And Chairman Hooker, you mentioned the curfew that the governor talked about. I was on a call today with the code enforcement people, and they've really ramped up their efforts to respond to complaints about businesses that aren't following, the COVID guidelines. So the code enforcement people are spending about 50 to 60% of their time on that issue alone. Next slide. Sustainability. We haven't had anyone come present yet, but we will. And but Kim and I have been working with the city planners and the sustainability group on updating what they call the AQIP, which is the air quality implementation plan that's attached. It's an attachment to the GMOC implementation plan, and it's a document that sets forth what the developers, the guidelines for developers to try and improve air quality through the design of their projects. And it's just really, really outdated. So they've been working on that for several months, and Kim and I have been involved in that. So that will be one of the things that we bring forward to you down the road. The sustainability group is is working on an environmental equity initiative that's been presented to several groups that we'll probably bring forward as well. So we'll be having more conversations with them, and also about their climate action plan. The city has an adopted climate action plan, and I think that would be a great place to look for the different goals that the city has for sustainability. And then the state is now requiring in all general plans that we have an environmental justice element. So that'll be something that we look at as well. And I think the big focus right now for the general plan is updating the housing element. There's a really strict timeline for that. Then after they'll look at the environmental justice element. Next slide. Health and wellness. Kim and I went to the Healthy Chula Vista Advisory Commission, talked to them, and then we had a presentation by Stacy, our staff person that's in charge of the Healthy Chula Vista Initiative. And their chair came, Dr. Alan Rodriguez, and they talked about their action plan, creating an age-friendly city. And their focus really is wanting to make sure from a health and wellness standpoint that people's basic needs are getting met for housing, medication, and food security. And just today, I was at one of the recreation facilities where the city staff was handing out, it was a food drive that we're handing out food to folks. So it was just a great example of shifting staff that used to, do park and rec activities to serving the community by distributing food. We talked about health outcomes for diseases, diabetes and heart disease, and a big focus on access and equity. Next slide. At our last meeting, we had Dennis, I can never say his last name, our Chief Sustainability Officer, come and present. He oversees the Smart City Initiative. And what we learned from him is that he really coordinates with all the departments to have an innovative mindset. So when you heard from the police chief about their survey, their this live 911, I don't think she mentioned that, but this live 911 is really helping with response times and getting the right people there at the right time. And so those are things that are falling under the Smart City Initiative. One thing Dennis talked about is the digital divide, which I think might be something that we want to look at. The city's been real involved in like getting Wi-Fi to communities that don't have it, that need it, as well as computers to schools. So I'm still not sure if we want to do smart cities as a separate topic, but I think there's some things there we should consider. Next slide. So next steps. December on the meeting in the 3rd, Kim's going to present the draft FY 1920 report to you. And then in the 2nd meeting in December, and then meetings in January and February, we'll have subject matter experts come on the other topics we haven't covered yet. That's 5 meetings. In January, I'm hoping to go to the Planning Commission with just where we are now for their input. March, we'd like to present to you proposed metrics. April, a draft ordinance. May, some of the stakeholder meetings, and then June, Planning Commission, July, City Council. And hopefully we'll have a new name for GMOC. Don't know if you want to call it quality of life, but that's will be something we discuss when we look at the GMOC commission ordinance. If we don't need all these meetings, we'll definitely cancel them. Don't want to take up your time when we don't need to. But just wanted to pause and give you an overview of where we've come and where we're going.
Okay, thanks, Kim. That looks really good.
What is with my video?
I don't know if it was just me, but you were breaking up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Shoot.
not every word, but words here and there. I don't know if it was just me or if everybody heard that.
Well, clearly there's something wrong with my camera, so I'll work on that for the next meeting. That's why I come into the office, because I have problems at home, but now I'm having problems here, so. Any questions?
So, Claudia, one question for you. Do we need to have a pause for this? Even though, I guess it was on the agenda, right?
Yes, we would need a 2-minute break for the public to be able to comment.
Okay, so before we do that, any commissioners have questions for Kimberly?
Yeah, I do. This is Commissioner Torres. Kimberly, is that in March, when the proposed metrics come before the GMOC, I would imagine that we're not going to be limited on the GMOC, because I'm here representing the Planning Commission, is that the GMOC is not going to be limited to one meeting to opine on proposed metrics, but rather we'll have at least 2 meetings in March to give you the benefit of its feedback, correct? I saw her nodding her head, so I take that as a.
Kimberly, you're on mute.
Sorry, absolutely, at least 2 Commissioner Torres and however many we need to make these decisions.
Okay, any other comments or questions from commissioners? Okay, if not, I will now call for a 2-minute pause so the public can provide comments. As a reminder, refresh your screen to see any comments. Okay, the commenting period for this public comment is closed. I did not see any comments. Can you verify that, Claudia?
Yeah, I didn't receive any comments either.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to Kimberly or Kim for the presentation of threshold compliance questionnaires.
Thank you, Chair Hooker. Good evening, everyone. This past week, you were sent a large packet containing the most recent growth forecast and the completed threshold compliance questionnaires for the 11 growth management topics. Now, in a typical year, we would have guests from the various departments come and go over the questionnaires with you and see if you had any questions or comments. But because we are doing this condensed report this year to make room for the comprehensive review, we're doing it a little differently. Tonight, I'm going to be summarizing all those questionnaires with this PowerPoint presentation. And I would ask you to kind of reflect as we go through it to see if you have any issues or potential recommendations for the annual report, which I'm going to bring to you a draft version, the first meeting in December, and the final version, the second meeting in December. There were only 2 topics that were out of compliance this year. So I'm going to be going in alphabetical order, first with the compliant topics, starting with air quality and climate protection. And then we'll be ending with the 2 that were out of compliance. And those were libraries and police. So one other thing just to keep in mind is, and Kim alluded to this in her presentation, was thinking about some of the initiatives that the Chief Sustainability Officer, Dennis Kakunga, brought up last week or at the last meeting when he went over the action plan for smart cities. You'll see that some of the initiatives have already been completed and some are still in process. But with that, we can move to the next slide, please, Claudia. Thank you. So at the top of each slide, I will summarize the threshold standard, paraphrase what it is. So currently, the greenhouse gas emissions should be below 2005 levels by 2020 and 55% below those levels by 2030. So per the 2016 greenhouse gas inventory adopted by Council this past May, the greenhouse gas emissions were 12% below 2005 levels. So we're getting close. And that was a 28% per capita. Emissions continued to go down with an approximate 30% reduction in overall greenhouse gas emissions from city operations since 2012. And that's a 68% reduction since 1990. So they're definitely moving in the right direction and getting closer to meeting these goals. The sustainability department works to, excuse me? Oh, I thought I heard.
So do you want questions as we go through these, or?
Why don't I at least get through the particular topic, and then if you want to stop me after a topic, we could do that.
Okay.
Okay, so going bullet by bullet, the Sustainability Department is working to implement its 2017 Climate Action Plan actions, such as developing the existing home energy and benchmarking ordinances to encourage energy efficiency in existing buildings and adoption of the active transportation plan. There are currently 28 electric vehicle chargers at 5 public facing municipal facilities, and the city is applying for grants to install more. Implementing the city operations sustainability plan is also a high priority. This establishes numeric targets and strategies for energy use, water use, green purchasing, waste management, pollution prevention, transportation, and green buildings infrastructure. And in response to COVID-19, the city is doing a slow streets pilot on 3rd Avenue that will open additional parking spaces for biking, walking, and street side businesses during evening hours. And did you have a question, Chair, or anyone else on this topic?
And I think I bring this up every year. They, you know, the peer performance, the per the dates for this were for this last year, but they always quote, you know, 2016 or 2015 or 2012 numbers for the air quality. They never have a measurement from this current year. I guess
Well,
are they getting any better with
lags
that?
behind it. So, well, it's not their fault. It's like a 4-year process. So these are the most current numbers that they have available. So I believe in 2020, if so for next year's report, if we still had this particular threshold, we would use those numbers.
Right, understand that, but how can, and I asked this question last year, you know, how can we say it's compliant with old data?
I guess this is a good question to ask as we do our comprehensive review. If it's not providing relevant information, then maybe we need to look at different metrics.
Yeah, I agree with that, because the reporting period, you know, they don't report any data from the reporting period. That's been my problem with this one. But that's enough. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next slide, please. So for drainage, the threshold is that stormwater flows and volumes shall not exceed city engineering standards and shall comply with current local, state, and federal regulations. The flows and volumes did not exceed city engineering standards during fiscal year 2020, and no new facilities are needed to accommodate projected growth in the next 18 months or within the next 5 years. Any questions or comments on that? All right, then next slide, please. Fire and EMS. The threshold is properly equipped and staffed fire and medical units shall respond to calls throughout the city within 7 minutes in at least 80% of the cases. So the response time, 84.1% of the calls within 7 minutes. So they well exceeded the threshold standard. That is a 2.1% improvement from fiscal year 2019. The fire stations in Eastern Chula Vista do continue to struggle a little bit. However, they had a 12.1% improvement. They are inching up closer and closer to that 80% at 78.8%. The department attributes these improvements to the 4.0 staffing funded by Measure A and apparatus and fleet replacements funded by Measure P. They are projected to continue meeting the threshold standard through the next 12 to 18 months, but not in 5 years, because additional fire stations will be needed, one for the Bayfront development and one for Otay Ranch Village 8 West. A reduction in calls for service and ambulance transports have occurred since COVID-19. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Then we'll go. Sure.
Yeah, so my question is, did they mention anything about how the squad patrols were doing?
The what patrols? Oh, the roving?
Yes, the roving, yes, sorry.
In the questionnaire, I didn't see anything that addressed that specifically.
So there wasn't a question.
But I imagine that's all part of.
Huh? Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't recall them mentioning that um, in their successful response times, but I'm sure that that's part of it. It's
Yeah,
a combination of,
I mean, I'm just curious because that's one of the latest, changes that they've made, and the response times are getting better. So it'd be nice. I mean, because if they're just increasing their staff, I don't see how that. I mean, the whole idea of the patrols was to have them strategically placed throughout the city, right? I mean, that was part of it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the numbers here on their table 4, and it looks like they boosted up a lot of stations 4, 5, and 6. And if I remember right, those were some of the problems. But I mean, everybody's in the high 70s and 80s, where before they were down in the 50s. And if I remember, Chief from last year said they were using those roving patrols as surge for fire stations that were falling behind.
Right. See, that's what I would like to know, more of, because I don't see how just increasing staffing would really justify better response times because they're all still at the same station.
Right. I think that's if we could follow up with that question of which fire station got more roving patrols than others, or was it across the board the same? Or
or just like give us an update on how the roving patrols have been working. What are they, what's their strategy for implementing them out within the city? Because I mean, obviously something's working, but we're just not really sure. Or at least it doesn't really, not really getting it from this data here. But anyways, if we could just follow up on that, that would be great to know, I think.
All righty. Sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Kim.
Any other comments? Yes, thank you.
I don't see any comment about the AMR replacement. Was there any movement on that?
It was not in there. The focus, we had less questions on these questionnaires this year. We tried to keep it streamlined to focus primarily on whether or not they were meeting the threshold, and didn't ask as many probing questions, I guess, about how they were meeting the thresholds, just whether or not they were in compliance.
Okay.
So and if I could add, the EMS, we wouldn't have any data on because I think that's just been implemented or in the process of being implemented.
But if I remember right,
AMR?
we had asked questions either at one of the last meetings or at the joint meeting about the analysis of the FTEs and how they were going to fund it and stuff like that. I have to go look by memory. We had some concerns on that, but I don't remember specifically what it was, unless some of my commissioners can remember.
We can talk to the fire department and get back to you.
Yeah. The good news is something is working because this is either the second or third year in a row that they have complied with the threshold standard. So.
Yeah, this was a 2% jump.
And as Kim said, we'll.
Go ahead, Kim. Go ahead.
And I think, and some of that may be also because of COVID, because they did indicate in their questionnaire that they said there was a decrease in calls for service, increase in call processing, decrease in ambulance transports, risk reduction by eliminating pre-positioning of the squads. So all of that may have impacted the change in the data.
Yeah, because they had about 1,800 less calls from the previous year.
Yeah, so that would mean that
That's pretty significant.
that would mean that their availability is more ready to go on other calls.
Yep.
They're not out and about chasing down
Right.
animals and so forth. So, see, and that's what I would just like to know, a little bit more detail on how they're attributing that 2.1% improvement from 2019, because that seems pretty significant.
Mhm.
I mean, that's great. I mean, they're doing a great job, but it'd be good for GMOC to know.
Mhm. Okay, we will ask for more information and bring that back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then should we move to the next slide? Fiscal. So fiscal analysis, impact analyses, and the PFFPs at time of adoption need to ensure that development is essentially paying for itself when it comes to the required services and facilities. Also, they must provide DIF and capital improvement and other funding programs to ensure timely delivery of infrastructure and services needed to support growth consistent with the threshold standards. So the fiscal questionnaire had a lot of information in it. Some of it was directly from the current budget. The fiscal year 2021 general fund operating budget is 206.7 million, and the CIP budget is 21.9 million. Charges for service revenue is projected to be approximately 1.7 million more than 2020 due to increased collections for city services and increased building permit activity. Projected revenue from Measure A, which is the half-cent sales tax to fund public safety, is approximately 20.2 million. Revenues from Measure P, which is the half-cent temporary sales tax that expires after 10 years, is expected to generate 19 million per year, which is 3 million more than originally estimated. So the Citizens Oversight Committee that reviews potential projects will advise on what capital projects to spend the additional revenue on. There were adequate DIF funds available to, or there are adequate DIF funds available to complete projects needed in the next 12 to 18 months. Several DIFs will be revised in 2021 and 2022 for future development. COVID-19 continues to threaten city operations, revenues, and public safety. The long-term financial impacts of the pandemic are still unknown, but city staff continues to explore options to address the projected future structural deficits potentially exacerbated by the current pandemic. And it's not mentioned here, but the city did put together a 90-day economic recovery plan, and they focused a lot on 3rd Avenue, trying to help keep some of those small mom and pop businesses, from going under. And we've had discussions about that in previous meetings about who got money, how did they get the money, how much money did they get. But essentially, it has turned out to be a lifeline for a lot of those businesses. And hopefully, as our economic development department continues coming up with new ideas, we'll make it through this next phase of COVID. Also, we did discuss CARES funding in previous meetings. That funding does not help out the city's finances directly. That's reimbursements for stuff that's directly involved with COVID. So
Kim, the way I
questions or
read
comments
this,
on
they
this?
didn't take a big impact because of COVID like other cities. Is that a good?
They have actually made some revisions, some budget adjustments since after adoption, and to accommodate some of the changes that are occurring.
But I think as a general statement, that's correct, Chairman Hooker, that our city has not been as impacted as other cities that rely heavily on TOT tax from hotels, for example.
That's outstanding. That's really great.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
The where it says charges for service revenue is projected to be 1.7 million more than 2020 due to increased collections for city services. Does it state what these collections are?
I didn't see it in the report. But I could check into that and narrow that down if that's something you'd like to know.
I'm just wondering if there was an increase in fees or an increase in business.
I think it was increases in fees, but I'll verify that.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Any other comments on this topic? Okay, then next slide, please. Parks and Recreation. The threshold is 3 acres of neighborhood and community parkland with appropriate facilities for 1,000 residents east of I-805. Currently, the park acreage, as of June 30th, was 3.75 acres per 1,000 east of 805, so well within that threshold. West, 1.16, and citywide, we're at 2.73. But West and citywide are not currently part of the threshold standard. This is more informational. In the spring of 2020, 2 parks were opened in Millennia, Orion and Strata. In 18 months, 10 more acres will be needed in Eastern Chula Vista. And future parks are Millennia Park, 4.79 acres, and Otay Ranch Village 3, Ascaya Park, 7.5 acres. So that will cover the 10 additional acres that will be needed. In 5 years, the threshold will remain compliant with the addition of 50.21 more acres of parkland, and acreage will increase in both Western Chula Vista and citywide. The response to COVID-19 was that rec centers were used for food storage, emergency shelters, distance learning centers, and testing sites. And picnicking, playing family sports activities, and sitting in the park has vastly increased since COVID-19. Any questions or comments on this topic?
Now, this is Commissioner Torres. When I read the report, the thing that kind of took me is that it's not just an issue of how many parks or park acreage we have in the city, east or west. What was reported by staff that's becoming a problem is the maintenance of the parks east of Chula Vista, requiring, because this has come before the Planning Commission, is requiring a maintenance agreement between the city and the developer, and or maintenance agreements between the city and the HOA. So the question that I have for you, Kim and Kimberly, is would that not be a new metric that the GMOC may want to consider, is the maintenance of the parks and how to maintain them at appropriate levels, and what appropriate vehicles should be utilized by the city to ensure that the parks, especially on the east side, and there's going to be some new parts of the west side, but that they're properly maintained for the residents of Chula Vista. I mean, that was brought out by staff, and I think that needs to be addressed moving forward in the design of new metrics. Your thoughts?
Well, maintenance is definitely an ongoing issue, and the city, I think, has come up with some creative solutions to help fund the maintenance in the future. Kim, do you want to weigh in on that at all?
Well, definitely, as you mentioned, Commissioner Torres, they have started working with developers to have their HOAs like maintain. I think they're doing that in Millennia, where I believe the HOA pays half and the city pays half the maintenance, especially for these highly amenitized parks that cost a lot more to maintain.
Exactly.
Pardon?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, you know, a budgeting issue of.
Yeah, and that's my point, is that I'm not saying this as a critique. I'm saying that maybe this should be a new metric.
Yeah.
So that way we talk about not just park acreage, but park maintenance and how the city is addressing this issue, again, outside the conventional box.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is we need to capture, because that is a quality issue.
Absolutely, right.
That's the point.
Parks. Yeah. Okay, we'll definitely look into that and work with Parks and Rec on that.
Okay, any other comments on this topic? Then let's go to the next slide, please. Schools. Basically, the city provides the schools with a copy of the residential growth forecast, and then the schools respond to see if they project to be able to accommodate the increased population. The Chula Vista Elementary School District responded that they weren't able to provide current enrollment projections due to COVID-19, but they did say that kinder enrollment is down 40% due to the pandemic. They do have distance learning information and resources available on the school's website. And adequate facilities should meet the demands for the next 12 to 18 months and 5 years, with construction of 2 new schools. The first one in Otay Ranch Village 3, construction is supposed to begin this coming spring, March, and is needed by July of 22. And the second one is Otay Ranch Village 2. It's the second elementary school that will be constructed there, and that should start in spring of 22 and be completed by the fall of 23. Sweetwater Union High School District has the existing facilities are sufficient to accommodate forecasted growth through 2025. No new schools are planned before then, as enrollment does continue to decline. Currently processing enrollment numbers and forecasts for fiscal year 2022, incorporating data from an updated demographic study study report that's underway. During COVID-19, the district and school sites provide ongoing support to students and will be implementing small group cohort support on sites. Any questions or comments? Next slide, please. Sewer. There are 2 thresholds. Existing and projected facility sewage flows and volume shall not exceed capacity, and the city shall ensure adequate capacity for future needs. Flows and volumes did not exceed capacity. Average flow increased 0.7 million gallons per day from 2019 to 2020, and is projected to increase another 0.9 MGDs within 5 years. The current system and budgeted improvements can accommodate sewage flows and volumes for 18 months. More facilities will need to be constructed within 5 years and will be funded from DIFs and sewer facilities replacement funds. Any comments or questions? Next slide, please. Traffic. 2 thresholds. The arterial LOS for non-urban streets. Maintain LOSC or LOSD for 2 hours during peak hours. And for urban LOS, maintain D or LOSE for 2 hours during peak hours. For the first time in several years, the traffic threshold standard was compliant, and it's attributed to COVID significantly impacting traffic flow. Significantly reduced volume resulted in improved LOS across the city for a limited time from approximately April to June of 2020. Data collected in May indicated that pandemic-related shutdowns resulted in traffic volumes that were as low as about 40% of the volume measured during the same time in 2019. Now, the one that has been, the one arterial that has been non-compliant since 2015 is the Palomar over at Industrial, where the grade separation needs to occur. Even that is currently compliant as businesses have been shut down and people have been telecommuting. There's just not as much traffic there currently. The city has implemented the transportation study guidelines that define new environmental thresholds for traffic in accordance with Senate Bill 743, which effectively removes LOS as a metric for environmental impact and changes it to vehicle miles traveled when evaluating a project. Any questions or comments? All right, next slide, please. Water. The city provides the districts with a 5-year growth forecast, and then they respond regarding their ability to accommodate the increased population. Otay Water District, the supply and storage capacity for both potable and non-potable water exceeds the current demand and the demand projected within the next 5 years. Demand for potable water went up 0.1 million gallons per day, and the demand for non-potable water went down 0.1 since fiscal year 2019. Current facilities can adequately serve growth projections for the next 5 years. And water conservation efforts remain voluntary in San Diego County since the drought restrictions enacted in 2015 were rescinded. Sweetwater Authority, their supply and storage capacity for potable water exceeds the current demand and the demand projected for 2025. They're working closely with the city and the Port District developers and consultants on the Bayfront development, including the Costa Vista RV Park and the Pacifica development. And they are updating the water distribution system master plan and preparing the 2020 urban water management plan in coordination with the city. Comments or questions? Okay, so that concludes the compliant topics. Now we'll move on to the, we're still on the same presentation. We're just going to move to the next slide, which is for libraries. Okay, so this is non-compliant. The threshold is to provide 500 gross square feet of library space adequately equipped and staffed per 1,000 population. Square footage, currently providing 354 gross square feet per 1,000, which is 146 gross square feet per 1,000 below the threshold. They will be unable to accommodate the projected growth in 12 to 18 months or 5 years. In 2020, the city renewed its three-year contract with the Otay Ranch Library. They're anticipating construction of a new full-service library in Eastern Chula Vista within 5 years to help reduce the square footage deficit. But even then, we would still be out of compliance. So we need more than one based on these current metrics. Regarding library expenditures, staffing, and services, library expenditure per capita was $13.88. The state median is $37.67. Staffing ratio was 0.1482 full-time staff per 1,000. State median is 0.30. The library's public access computers hosted over 88,544 uses, assisting citizens without the internet or internet-enabled devices. Next slide, please. So the libraries was very affected by COVID-19. Previous slide, please. Thank you. All libraries have been closed since March 2020, but they have been offering curbside and passport services at the Civic Center and South branches, and virtual programming such as story times, crafts, STEAM workshops, and job assistance programs. They were influential in bridging the digital divide, which has been brought up previously regarding smart cities, through the purchase of 2,000 Wi-Fi internet access hotspots for families in the Chula Vista Elementary School District who are most in need during this time of distance learning. Staff worked on the 211 phone lines through July, assisting over 12,500 calls and spending 2,825 hours to answer the community's questions about rental assistance, utility assistance, and food security. And they coordinated with the Recreation Department in developing Chula Vista's Food Helpline, a service that provides emergency food to homebound residents needing access to food. The library hosts the helpline number and the food deliveries from the San Diego Food Bank, and then the rec staff provides non-contact home delivery to community members. This is a great example of a department using its resources to, pivot where new needs emerge and address those needs. Questions or comments on libraries? Okay, then we'll go to police. And some of this information may be a bit redundant or even outdated after the presentation by Chief Kennedy and Joseph Walker this evening. But the threshold standard for priority 1 is to respond to at least 81% of calls within 7 minutes, 30 seconds and maintain an average response time of 6 minutes or less, properly equipped and staffed. Priority 2 is respond within 12 minutes or less, properly equipped and staffed. So the priority 1 response percentage came in at 76.43%. That was a 2.71% improvement. And the average response time was 6 minutes, 14 seconds, 2 seconds longer than fiscal year 2019. However, as the chief mentioned this evening, they are now below 6 minutes and meeting that threshold standard. That is a big achievement. The P2 average response time was 14 minutes, 47 seconds. That was a 2 minute, 50 second improvement. And as the chief mentioned this evening, they are now below 14 minutes for the priority 2 response time. They are not expected to meet the thresholds in the next 12 to 18 months or the next 5 years. But as we learned this evening, they did meet it. They did meet P1 already. So we hope that that trend will continue. They're actively hiring to fill vacancies for staff approved by council. That's kind of a continuous challenge with people retiring or people getting injured. So there are positions that are budgeted. They just need to get those positions filled, get people through the academy, and find qualified candidates. They are implementing innovative technologies and policies such as the live line. Sorry, I'm getting really tongue twisted at the end here, which live streams 911 calls directly to officers in the field, eliminating the need for officers to wait for the dispatchers to assign them. And they're also developing incident-based green light preemption, so that Opticon would turn traffic signals green as the officers approach intersections during responses. And then the data-generated dashboards to track response times help determine adequate staffing. As the chief described this evening, they look to see where the staff is needed the most and make adjustments accordingly. Next slide, please. So the effects of COVID on police. The calls for service volumes are trending at 9% below the past 2-year average number of calls, and the decline is likely associated with the stay-at-home orders. Disturbance person calls are up 10%, while domestic violence and check on a person's well-being are slightly down. Traffic collision calls are down 32%. Crimes such as armed robbery and non-residential burglaries are up 30%. Murder is up 200%. Rapes and residential burglaries are down approximately 30%, and larceny is down 20%. Data shows that calls for service call for service a reduction for the top 5 call types, but the number of crimes within the community in 2020 from January through August went up compared to the average of the last 3 years during the same period. But as the chief mentioned this evening, and Joseph as well, Chula Vista is not unique in that regard. This trend is occurring in other cities also during these unique circumstances that we're in. Any questions or comments on police?
Hi, Kim. Hey, Kim.
Yes.
Oh, I have a question. I missed part of the chief.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, chief's presentation, so I don't know what she all went over. But my question is, did she say how many sworn officers they have as of today?
She didn't mention it by number, no.
She did. Did she say how many more they need to hire to be at capacity or to where they want to be?
No, but I believe she commented that it's going to be challenging to get back up to the number where they were before, in terms of filling the vacancies.
Mm-hmm.
They do continue to be one of the lowest staffed in the county, but right now they're just trying to fill the positions that they have funding for.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. So she didn't give a number. Okay, that's fine.
That might be in the actual report. I'll look that up while we're waiting here. If I could just tag on the live 911 calls, she didn't talk about it too much tonight, but they're contributing. That's one of the big contributors to why they were able to reduce so much in the response times, because the live 1-1, the officers can all hear it, and whoever's closest can start moving in that direction before waiting to get an official dispatch. So it's cutting down time tremendously. And that's a technology advancement. So that's great.
Yeah, she did stress that innovation is what's going to help them the most. I think even more so than additional staffing, to continue to reduce their response times.
Mention anything about the drone program?
She didn't go into a lot of detail about that tonight, and I was kind of surprised because I don't know if you saw that the Chula Vista Police Department's innovative drone as a first responder program has just gotten an international award. The International Association of Chiefs of Police presented the program with the 2020 Leadership Award in Police Aviation. So it continues to do a great job and be an example for other communities that, you know, want to emulate what we're doing here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Kim, this is Michael. I have a specific comment.
Any other questions or comments?
Kim, can you hear me?
Yes.
On the questionnaire on table
I can
one,
hear you.
Table 1 says priority 1, emergency calls or services. I think that should be emergency calls for service.
Oh, yes, I think you're right. Yes, absolutely.
And then I'll reiterate, I think partly Rod's point
Okay.
and your point on the service levels. Yeah, both priority 1 and priority 2 for 2020, the service levels are down. And looking at Joseph's slide, it seems like, you know, that trend's continuing as you noted. Hopefully these efficiencies help, but I think we do want to monitor it. I think we want to be fair to the police department and make sure, you know, I expect within the year as, you know, schools open back up, business open back up, the services are going to increase, and we'll just want to make sure they do have adequate staffing. So I think that's just a note for us as the GMC. We're going to have to monitor that because I'm just a little concerned. Part of the, you know, reaching the threshold is that the service levels are down.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other comments on police? Okay, then I would ask if we could summarize, as I mentioned at the beginning. I want you to decide if you have any particular issues and recommendations to include in the report, the annual report, which I'll be drafting between now and December 3rd. Looking back on the comments regarding air quality, there were, Dwayne, you had some questions about timing, having like old data. Is there anything that you want addressed in the report regarding that?
No, like I said, my comment was just, you know, where the reporting period to report is 2019, 2020, but they're using data from 2016 to reply to the questionnaire. Understand why, but you know, I just, you know, to me, it's I could argue that they're not compliant because they don't have data to show the reporting year.
They get their data from the pollution control.
Okay.
Chairman Hooker, they get their data from the air pollution control district, so it's not independently generated from Chula Vista. So I think they're kind of at the mercy of how up to date their quality numbers are from.
Right. No, I understand why they do that. I just, to me, it skews the report because it's not within the reporting period.
And Kim, this is Commissioner Strong.
And on that note,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Did we say that this is Commissioner Strong? Did we say that we're going to be taking a look at that? And the as we look at the thresholds, the new thresholds that we're looking into for next year, and seeing if that's something we want to monitor, or seeing how we could potentially change that, or seeing if there's any data that APCD could give us that's more current to be able to monitor.
We can definitely meet with,
Yeah, under the topic of sustainability, we're, sorry, two Kims are talking.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kim.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, okay. Yeah, I was just saying that under the topic of sustainability, you know, we'll talk about air quality and climate protection and other things that would fall under that umbrella. And you know, maybe we'll come up with different metrics that, you know, are more relevant.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's really the key is
I also wanted to mention, I just wanted to mention about the APCD. Normally we get a questionnaire completed by them as well. I'm not sure what's going on over there, but I was unable to get any response from them whatsoever, either through email or phone calls. So
And I'm happy to check in
we
with them
didn't
if
have
you
a
want
report
me
from
to.
them, but
Kim, this is Commissioner Strong. I'm happy to check in if you need me
oh,
to
okay.
ask about this report.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's a part of my day job.
Okay, very good. Oh, great. Thank you. I'll follow up with you after the meeting. Thank you.
and another comment.
Okay,
I think,
so then
Commissioner
in terms
Lundell,
of fiscal,
what I was going to say under other comments, I think Commissioner Lundell hit the mark with the police comments. Just to, you know, it's great that they had a better year, but you know, we had less numbers and you know, the pandemic going on, so you know, they should have lower numbers. It's just
yeah.
something to keep an eye on.
Okay, if I could just go through chronologically what I have here in my notes a moment, and then, because I don't want to miss anything. Regarding fiscal, Gloria, you were asking for clarification regarding the increase in fees. But that's essentially just information, not an issue or recommendation.
Correct.
Okay. And then
on
regarding
fiscal,
parks,
Kim, if we could go to fiscal
yes.
back real quick. I didn't, and I know
Sure.
we ask this question all the time about the pension plan. I didn't see anything about the pension plan and what the current numbers are. They usually provide that as a separate document.
Well, they did put some information in the questionnaire, and they have, I believe when City Manager Kachadorian came to the GMOC, she mentioned that they were going to be doing a bond for pensions and expect that to get approved after the first of the year. So I think that's how they're going to be handling the pension moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, they're well on the way to issuing pension obligation bonds that are going to help a lot with the city's ability to pay the pension obligations.
Okay, I didn't see that in the report, but I'll look again.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that too. If that's what they're doing, I think it needs to be addressed in the report.
Okay.
And how they're handling this pension and what the goals are and what the steps they're taking to try to minimize that deficit.
Yeah, I can include that in the summary. It doesn't seem like it's an issue at this point. It's something that's already being dealt with. So it'd be more informational.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then regarding parks, Commissioner Torres, you mentioned, let's see, parks acreage. The parks maintenance, looking outside the box for ways to maintain these expensive parks and, potentially changing the metric or for through the comprehensive review.
Correct.
How would you like that addressed in the annual report, Commissioner Torres?
Not addressed in the annual report,
Yeah.
but prospectively.
Yes, Kim, that does not need to be addressed. Yeah, he's making a recommendation about
Yeah,
Okay,
new metrics, yeah.
correct.
okay. I just want to double check. I just don't want to overlook anything and make sure,
Thank
I want
Thank you for asking, Kim.
to do
No,
everyone justice here.
Sure.
Thank you for asking.
Sure. Okay. So then, so for police, it sounds like you do want to have a recommendation in terms of staffing.
It sounded to
or
me,
just a discussion.
I don't think it was staffing related, Michael, right? It was more of answering, they got a dip in the number of calls, and that's why their numbers kind of changed. It was more of keep an eye on how the trend is.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
My
how to
notes
look at
said
that.
that we want to make sure they have. I'm sorry, please go ahead, Commissioner Lingo.
I think that's right, but I guess my note would be, I think it's staffing related because I think my suggestion, the comment would be that monitor service levels, and if they increase, ensure there's adequate staffing. It sounds like part of the reason they're meeting the thresholds is new technology, which is great, but I just would like a comment that we monitor that and make sure that, they continue to fill their positions to make sure, staffing doesn't fall behind. But I'm open how we want to characterize that.
This is Commissioner Torres. Let me ask a question of everybody. Is that, aside from the response time, the police department has lamented, since I've been sitting in with you guys, the whole staffing issue. Wouldn't prospectively, not in this annual report, but prospectively, would a proper metric be sworn officers per 1,000 residents? That's a common metric that's used by police departments across the nation. I used to work as a policy budget analyst for Long Beach Police Department. This is going back, 30, 25 years. And that was always used as a common denominator, comparing police departments one to the other, is sworn officers per 1,000 residents. That would seem to me that it would behoove the GMOC to look at that number and have that included. So that way, it's a quality of life issue, and it might allow the proper measurement of that topic. Something to think about.
And I agree with that. I think they've talked about that number, number of officers per residence, but it's never been a measurement. I think that's a good idea to measure.
Yeah, then you can compare that county-wide, statewide, so on and so forth. Things of comparable size, then we get a better picture.
Right.
Well, I think it does give you a picture, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how safe the community is. You could have a big police department with very little technology, like our department has, or not as good a leadership, yet our city may be outperforming a large department. So I just want to be careful when we look at things like that. And we'll definitely talk to the chief about that, if that's a good metric in her mind.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why I suggested after Chief Kennedy's presentation, and I want to commend it because I think we're lucky to have her.
Yeah,
I commended that she worked with you on that, because they have that dashboard, that the gentleman, their policy analyst or whoever he is. There's a whole plethora of information that bears on the whole quality of life issue, what you're talking about, Kimberly. And you guys just got to get your heads together. How do we take that information, transpose it into quantifiable quality of life issues that give a good representation of the police department's performance? And, in addition to sworn officers per 1,000 residents, but it's what you guys collectively come up with.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And they, of all the departments that we've worked with on this particular issue, they are just so data driven, which I think is pretty unique for a police department, and they're so transparent. So I definitely want to do a deeper dive on all the metrics that they have available to them, the things that they're measuring.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of good data in that data that we could pull in to show quality of life and some of their stuff that they're doing that Mr. Walker's putting together and putting that in the threshold and really tell a better story than we're telling now.
I agree. Great comments.
Okay, then to summarize, it looks like we'll just have one recommendation, and that will be under police, and that is in regards to ensuring that we have adequate staff should the service levels start trending back in the other direction.
I think I would put it beyond adequate staff, just making sure that because it's more than just staff to me. It's how Chief Kennedy's applying her resources, from the drone program to to the staff and increasing everything. So maybe make it a little broader than just staff.
Well, but my understanding is that that's where that's a vulnerable area. The drone program is up and running. The technology is in a good place, but the staffing is vulnerable. So that's how I understood it from Commissioner Langell.
Right. I think I agree with that. I just think the drone program helped with reducing the number. Granted, you still need the staff to respond to the calls, but they were able to reduce that number by using the drone on the west side to get to get eyeballs on scene faster to support that staff.
Okay, do you have a proposed or any proposed verbiage for the recommendation, or?
GMOC recommends to.
If not, we can work.
Yeah, we can work on it. I got to think about how to put that good, but I think if we just capture those notes, we can put together a good statement.
And because you'll have to put together your chair cover memo as well.
Yep.
So you and I can touch base after the. Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Okay, then if there are no more questions or comments, that completes my presentation.
Okay, any other commissioner has any questions before we go to 2-minute pause? Okay, so I will now call for a 2-minute pause for public to submit any final comments on the item. As a reminder, refresh the page to see if there's any comments. Okay, the comment period for this is over. Claudia, I don't see a comment link there for the last presentation, so I don't know if there was any comments.
No, it would be the same link, and there weren't any comments.
Okay. All right. Let's see where we at now. All right. Next question. We'll move on to other business. Staff comments.
Oh, I just wanted to note one item that I think you may find interesting in regards to the annual residential growth forecast that was in your packet. When it was completed, we were basing it on building permits issued through the end of August, and there were 403 issued at that time. Since then, it has more than doubled. We are at 856 currently.
Wow.
That's great. I can tell.
So COVID did not slow down the development.
Yeah, we've heard that from all the builders that sales are going gangbusters.
Okay. Any other comments, Kim or Kimberly?
Just a housekeeping item. The next meeting is scheduled for December 3rd, and we were thinking that at that meeting, Kim would present and review the annual report. That means Kim would have to have the report done by next Wednesday just to get it out to you in time. So just a heads up, we may need to cancel that meeting if we can't get the report done in time, and in which case we go over it on December 19th.
Okay.
But we'll let you know.
Although I'm confident that I'll get it done.
Okay, there you go.
It's a matter of going. It's a matter of getting it through all the other layers, I guess, of approval. But I think if we want to meet our January 28 deadline or meeting, we need to try to get it approved by December 19.
Okay.
So, I'll try to have it together.
Okay. Well, we'll keep you all posted. Yeah, it may be a matter of can we get it all approved internally?
Okay. Chair comments.
Yeah.
I've noticed our resident attorney hasn't been here lately. Is he okay? And is that any issues?
I'm sorry, who was that?
Our resident attorney.
Oh, he's fine. He doesn't. Let's see. Tonight he's out of town or had a conflict, but when we're not deliberating and taking actions, he didn't feel like there was a need for him to be here. He does review the agenda every week and the script and make sure that we're all, copacetic on what we're presenting in the whole public meeting essence.
Okay, I just want to make sure we didn't scare him off.
Yeah, no, he's good.
Okay. Any commissioners have any comments or questions?
Yeah, Commissioner Dwayne, I have a comment. So Kim, I want to know in response to the council's responses back to my questions, that I submitted late last year, I do have some follow-up questions, and I was wondering if we can request him to be here at the next meeting, if I may have the opportunity to follow up on that.
I will ask him. He may want you to submit them in writing through to Claudia, the secretary, but I will ask him and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners have comments or questions? Okay, the time is 8:27 p.m. and I adjourn this meeting to our regular meeting, tentatively scheduled for December 3rd at 6 p.m. Via teleconference. Thank you, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Night.
Yeah.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving. Good night.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
care.
Happy
Good night,
Thanksgiving.
everybody.
Good night.
Hey,
Go,
Kim.
go Saints.
Thanks.
Kim,